Hello, welcome back to another edition. I think I came in early on that. Yet another edition of After Further Review. I have no idea when our last show was. I believe it was sometime
in March, maybe.
Maybe. I don't know. Anyway, we are back. John Pelkey, as always, Mark Ferreira, Jeff Taylor, our producer, and the guy running the board, holding things together because Mark, when was the decision made to do this show? It's now 9:09 on Friday morning. Am I wrong in thinking that it was about 8:37 on Thursday night when we made this decision?
No, it was less than 24 hours.
Yeah, it couldn't have been last night because I do have to say to everyone out there, and I believe we're live on the YouTube, as my mother would call it, and I'd like to apologize for anyone who's stumbled into this and somehow can't change the channel as they probably want to. But before we talk about football, and really the only reason we're on is because we don't have a forum to sit around and talk about football at the ESPN Club anymore. Sadly, that building has been knocked to the ground, from what I understand. Apparently, it's still there, but
still exists.
It's no longer an open restaurant with entertainment, and whether it's any of those things ever again.
Yeah. We don't know what's in it.
Yeah, we don't know what's going on, but that's not going on. So we decided we're going to do a show. Derek Abbott, the offensive coordinator now, he was promoted. Mark and I still scuffling for work. Offensive coordinator at the Coast Guard Academy will join us to actually add some knowledge to this. But I must say that last night I did see Mark Ferreira, and people have to understand, Mark, we have gone the longest periods of time that you and I haven't seen each other since like 1999.
I mean,
with this pandemic, we go weeks now. I honestly, you called me I didn't remember who you were.
Right.
I was like,
who is this?
My
Mark
phone.
Who?
Well, my phone said scam likely. And so, I mean, I don't think my phone was wrong, frankly.
No. I'm sure my relationship with the phone company has turned into some sort of, promotion for the scam, if I call anyone. But you're right. At least when we did the podcast last year during the height, the first height of the pandemic,
right?
We saw each other virtually at least every day, or close to every day.
And, we don't do that anymore.
We don't do that, and
we essentially avoid.
We don't work in the same location anymore.
No, you could just end with "we don't work." You could actually end there, and that'd be largely how it still is.
Luckily, I have work these days. The Disney has called me. I'm a show director again, and I have multiple projects.
No, it's good.
But you're working as well. You're
a little bit
working at Universal, and
a little bit here or there. And I know Derek is with us, and we'll join him in just a second. But I do have to say this: that the reason I saw Mark last night was he was nice enough to get me comp tickets to see him in a theatrical production, Man of La Mancha, at the Garden Theater in Winter Garden, Florida. And Mark, as we said last night, my friend Zan, who was there with me, we enjoyed the show a great deal. You did a great job. I highly recommend people to go out and see it, support local theater, and see a good show. So there you go. How's that?
That's a pretty good review from John Pelkey. It really is.
Now,
unless it's a smash, unless it's a rave, that's the best. That's the best one can expect. So I thought it was
I thought it was an excellent production. I
appreciate that.
I really did. No, and it's a great show. Both you and I love the show. Yes. Great show. Terrific production. You did a nice job. Hopefully that'll be the last nice thing I have to say to you for the entire show at all. So now we're going to talk about football the day after the opening game of the NFL season. And wow, the NFL just literally can't lose. I mean, they will fall out of a moving truck into a bag of feathers, which is over just gold bullion. They can't do anything wrong because that was as good an opening night game as you could ever hope for.
That was a
unless you like running the football, and then it was not a great night at all.
No, it was perfect. It's two marquee names. Obviously, you always wonder why a team that finishes 6-10 the year before leads off the lineup, but it's the Cowboys.
Tonight's opening game, the Lions. And whomever, the Texans.
It's all about brand. Everyone knows this. It's all about brand, and the Cowboys have a very strong brand. How much are they worth now, John Pelkey? The franchise is worth
$167 trillion.
which is remarkable,
Right.
considering that they have not gone to a championship game in over a quarter of a century. Not even a
No.
championship game, not even a chance to get to the Super
No,
Bowl.
but you know what? This year, I will say this, and I hate the Dallas Cowboys more than I hate world hunger, the MAGA movement, you name it. I hate them more than all of these things. They're a really great storyline this year because of Dak, really. I mean, above and beyond, there's a lot of stuff going on there, but he's a guy that even if you don't like the Cowboys, he's a great, I don't think it's overstating saying he's a great player, a borderline top 5 or 6 quarterback in the league, I think, maybe. And certainly the reason he's not there is just probably lack of playing time because he lost all of last season. And he's rehabbing an injury, and no one knew how he could come back. And boy, did he step up. Now, both teams have some things to address. Defenses in week 1, though, I think scores on week 1 are not indicative of what scores are a lot of the rest of the season because it's really the first full speed stuff that you've gone. I don't care how many preseason games. I mean, this is different.
No, especially these days when, only a handful of teams play any starters during the preseason. So, no one's used to that. It's week 1. We've always talked about is something you throw out. I
don't even want to make my picks for week 1. It's just the most ridiculous because there's going to be something stupid. The aforementioned Lions will upset some. It's going to be.
Well, I hope they don't upset. They play the Niners week 1. I know. I'm not assuming that is not an assumed win, but we're going to try and do some predictions for the season, but we're going to avoid predictions for week 1 for the very reason. I mean, you mentioned, Johnny.
We'll give you your shocks and locks, and that's mainly for for our friend. You are looking live, Lenny. We'll give those out in a bit. But first, first we've gone on. We've just rambled on. But let's bring in the offensive coordinator of the Coast Guard Academy, our good friend, former college quarterback Derek Abbott. Derek, first of all, congratulations on the promotion. It's been for me. I don't know, Carter administration since I was ever promoted in a job. How did it happen? Did they do it in some sort of fun YouTube? You get balloons, they call you and you think you're being fired thing? Or was it just, did you just get a text? You're the OC. Move on.
It was a little bit of that. There was no parading. There was more, let's just get to work and hey, you're gonna be kind of running the show this year and just go get to work and go do your thing, and that's kind of what I did. So celebrated for about 20 minutes. Texted my dad, and that was about it.
Let me ask you this question because this is most important for Mark and I, for whom our motto is "effort is overrated." How much more work people don't realize how much work goes into being a football coach, really on any level, collegiate, Division III, all the way for pro football. Coaches put in a lot of time. Now you're the offensive coordinator. How different is it for you, and how much more work do you have to put in?
In some aspects, it's the same. In a lot of aspects, it's a little bit different. I mean, obviously the practice style is different because you're the one that's in charge of the practice. So,
but you're not individually coaching guys anywhere as much as you probably were in the past.
No, so I'm working primarily with the quarterbacks right now, which is a little bit closer to home for me. But I'll still go down with the offensive line. We are a little bit short-staffed coaching wise, so I do still have to wear multiple hats. But even the game planning stuff, still doing the cut-ups, still organizing film, still trying to pick up tendencies. There's still a lot of stuff that I do that's the same. The only difference in duty now is just play calling, and just figuring out that process is always interesting too, just because you got to get into your own flow, your own rhythm, and you got to figure out what works best for you. But in essence, I mean, my job is it's grown just because of obviously the duty of calling plays.
Right.
But,
by the way, just calling plays, and unlike Mark and Madden, you probably just don't go deep on every play.
Wow.
But
just the narrative has stuck for the last 20 years.
The great part about all of this too is that so our offensive coordinator who was here last year, he's also the head lacrosse coach as well too. So he's stuck around too to kind of be a consultant, if you will.
Nice.
So he's an awesome resource. He's been here for over 20 years. So I kind of lean back on him on a lot of stuff, just because I know that he's got way more experience than him. And I told him I was like, listen, at 27, if I'm the smartest guy in the room, we got some issues. So
Well,
that's always good. I think the best coaches and leaders always kind of defer to what you don't know to the people that do know it.
Well, and I think admitting that you don't know everything also is kind of half the battle. And I think we all know coaches that is an incredibly difficult thing to do. Well, since you're working with the quarterbacks now, I'm gonna throw this out there first. We saw a great football game last night. If you're a football fan and you didn't have a dog in that hunt or anything, it was still a great football game. And we saw some really, really great quarterback play. Just quickly break down. Tom Brady's the GOAT. I think we saw why. We also saw with Tom Brady that if you can get a little bit of pressure on him, that's, you can slow him down every now and again. But I want to talk about Dak a little bit because coming off of a significant injury, I expected to see more happy feet than I saw from him. I didn't expect him to look as comfortable as he did. I did feel that there were a couple of times where in the past he would have taken off running, where he pulled up a little bit and looked for a receiver. But break down his performance because he really, really impressed me.
Yeah, I thought that he was really efficient last night. Extremely accurate too, even on the interception. The ball hit CeeDee Lamb with both hands. Do I like the call per se? I mean, you got two posts going into the safeties. It's not always great, but even the ball placement was right there. Showed a ton of accuracy. Drive that you always get concerned with an injury. Does a person are they going to be gun shy? And obviously you didn't see that, but he took what Tampa gave him throughout the night too. They used a little bit more of like the snug formations through a bunch of the hitch routes and stop routes. And hey, I mean, those move the chains. I mean, if the defense wants to give you those little 7 to 8 yard routes, take them. I mean, then now you're getting into 2nd and 3 every time. So now, while the run game was non-existent, I wasn't happy because I had Zeke Elliott in my fantasy league.
Enjoy those 33 yards.
Yeah, my 3.3 points. But yeah, I thought he looked fantastic, and I think a lot of people kind of predicted that. People also were kind of talking about Kellen Moore's offense too as well, a little less staticky than it was last year. They did use some motion. There was that creativity early in the game with the fake end around and moving people from back and forth from 2x2 to 3x1. There was a little bit of a complaint, I guess, throughout people in the football world of like none of the movement stuff. And you saw a little bit more of that last night as well, too.
Good stuff last night. There's no doubt about it. And you're talking about a flow, controlling a flow as an OC right now, and trying to get your team in a flow, trying to connect with where your team is at. You mentioned that your team didn't play very well for 3 quarters and then got into a flow in the 4th quarter when you won your game last week. So talk about that with the Bucs, because it seems like basically every drive they had some sort of flow that they found. And sometimes, they had four turnovers. One was a throwaway at the end of the half, but
one bounced off Fournette's hands too. It was another one that was
shouldn't be. There was a couple of fumbles, a real bad one at the goal line, and those are things they have to clean up, obviously. But it seems like, including the very last drive again, for the 1000th time in his career, doing something at the end of the game to win it at 44 years old. It seems like they can do whatever they want offensively. They have to clean some things up, but they have a flow right off the bat. Speak to that. Is that because they've gotten everyone back from last year and it's the same stuff and everyone knows what they're doing?
Yeah, that's certainly a big aspect of it. A great example of that is just using us for an example. We only had 2 guys returning this year that had started an entire college football season. So we had a lot of unknowns. So when you go into that first game, you're trying to figure out what you're good at. How do guys react in a game situation? And then, what plays can you hang your hat on too? Well, Tampa's already been in that situation because they went through it last year. You saw in the first half of the season, they kind of struggled, and they put it together in the second half of the season. So to figure out, hey, core plays can come back to. It's running duo. It's running crossers with Antonio Brown or Rob Gronkowski and running, the Y cross concept. Finding, going the condensed split sets and running, just simple curl routes and wheels off of it. Just doing like little stuff like, it's just, hey, what are we good at? How can we get to it? in maybe a different way that we hadn't shown before, and just still executed at a high level. I think that's the most important part of getting into a flow. It's always about that first down. 3 and outs will kill you, not only, your defense too, because they're on the field right away, but when you can mount first downs, I mean, that's when you can start to kind of get your bag a little bit and start to set up stuff. You keep getting in 3 and outs, you can't set anything up because nothing's working. So in that sense, yeah, that's the most important part. Get that first down, and then you can kind of roll and then kind of get into your bag of tricks of like, what do you want to do offensively?
Yeah, and it didn't take them long either, because the Bucs had a quick 3 and out for their first drive, and then their second drive, I think, was a 94-yard drive for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. And as I said before, a couple of times the Cowboys got pressure on Brady and caused he'd throw the ball away. I think he took 1 sack, I believe, in the game. But boy, there were never 2 plays in a row where they got pressure. And a couple things that I noticed that I thought really bode well for the Bucs. The one thing they didn't have offensively last year was really a back who catches the ball well out of the backfield. We talked about Fournette dropping the pass. He apparently had been doing really well in training camp, but he's fallen back on some issues that he has with that. But Gio Bernard, the kid that they signed he's been in the league now, I believe, 9 years, out of Cincinnati, former first-round draft choice, I believe, of Cincinnati. Not only did I think Gio Bernard did a great job catching the ball out of the backfield, which he's really, really good guy to get the ball in space, and he has great hands, but to the pressure thing, the times he was in there, he was picking up blitzes left and right. And I tell you, you know that as well as anything, Derek, running backs can, I'll make a pun, run themselves out of the game by not being able to do that. And I was just really impressed that Bernard into the scheme. Game 1 seems like it comes easy to him. And if anything, the Bucs offense could be better than they were last year.
Yeah, they could be. I mean, obviously, with all that experience coming back, obviously you still have Tom Brady. I thought Gronk actually looked really good last night.
Oh yeah,
I was anticipating he was just going to be another tackle. In fact, I made the joke in our fantasy league when somebody took Gronk in like the 2nd or 3rd round. I was like, "Good job, you just drafted a tackle." And I sound like an idiot right now.
Right. Well, I bet Antonio Brown fell in the draft. I don't think he was a top pick.
Don't even get me started with that. I was a fan. So I'll give you guys a pretty good story. So Sunday is our draft. And in our family, in my family league, and we also have our Sunday meetings and stuff like that. So like the meetings had kind of concluded. I was in the process of making cut-ups, evaluating the film from the past week, and then also drafting in my fantasy league. So I knew that I wanted a quarterback. Okay, and I was on one screen. I was using dual monitors. So the one I went to go click a play on there. And instead of drafting Tom Brady, I accidentally drafted Matt Stafford. I'm like, oh my God. So now I'm pissed. So then I'm like, okay, well, I'll get him back in the set. I'll get him back coming back the other way. Lo and behold, the only other person to do this to me is my father. And he takes Antonio Brown before I can get him back. And he just starts texting me and starts laughing. He's like, I know you wanted AB. That's why I took him. Because I told him, I was like, he's having a great camp so far. Everything I've heard about him is that he looks like Antonio Brown from 2015, like he's unguardable. I am not telling my father a single thing about anything ever again. Football. He can go figure it out on his own.
And it was all about that you wanted him. It wasn't even about the research you had done. It was all about that you wanted him.
You know what? He has made a living off of just living on me right now, because we went golfing the last time and he didn't have a wedge. He started using my 60-degree wedge and all of a sudden he beats me now. I'm like, you know what? Go get your own 60-degree wedge.
I'm sorry.
You take my fantasy picks, you take my 60-degree wedge, I'm done with you.
Keith Abbott is the Bryson DeChambeau of fantasy sports and go. Let's just say it. Let's just say it right now. He's the guy everybody loves to hate in all that. All right, let's switch gears, because great game last night. I think both of these teams are going to be in the mix. I think if you're Dallas, you're feeling pretty good about yourself in a division that's relatively questionable. With some decent. Washington has a really good defense. It'd be interesting to see that sort of matchup offensively. Would they be able to score with them? But let's talk about some of these rookie.
Before we do that,
boy, here we go.
Before we do that, I do want to stress that Tom Brady had not a 2-minute drill, a 124-minute drill.
Yeah, he did.
Again at the end of the game. And oh, by the way, when his career wraps up when he's 78, he's going to be a great GM because not only the three guys that he was responsible for bringing into the Bucs, Gronk, Fournette, and Antonio Brown, each scored a touchdown in the Super Bowl last year.
Right.
But they're obviously also primed and set up. I mean, between Gronk and Brown, they got 3 touchdowns. Fournette is going to be great once he learns how to catch the ball, and maybe he gets a break with Bernard as well. But I just want to remind everyone of the greatness of Tom Brady continues at 44, and let's not miss that story, because I heard some analyst say, remember the story after the Super Bowl was not Tom Brady. It was all about Todd Bowles. Todd Bowles was a story, a very important, interesting, great story, but it was still 7 Super Bowls. Tom Brady goes to the Bucs,
All right.
7-9, and they won. I just want to remind people.
No, Mark, I think it's important that we continue to prop up Tom Brady, as underappreciated as he is as a quarterback.
I think he is, despite it all. I think
people just want to write him off because he's old. All right, so what I want to talk about is these rookie quarterbacks, because we did talk about this prior to the draft and around the draft. And let's start at the top with Trevor Lawrence, who will be starting for Jacksonville. I'm somewhat surprised, not terribly, because I've seen, Urban Meyer's a first-year coach as well. We've seen some of the mistakes he's made, some of the questionable things that he's done. But I also understand that when you draft a guy who, with those sort of expectations that high, you want to get him on the field. I don't know how much preseason you've seen, Derek, but if you've seen anything from Trevor Lawrence that either changes your mind? I know you're a fan. You think he's going to have success. Have you seen anything that either changes your mind or really reinforces what you thought?
I mean, even just some of the throws that he makes standing in the pocket and delivering, his athletic ability, even some from the practice clips that you see just on Twitter and everything like that. He is going to be good. He's as shown, as everybody thought that he was going to be pretty good. The Travis Etienne thing, that hurts, because I really don't know what they want to be offensively.
I don't think they do.
All I know is that they should probably just throw it to Laviska Shenault. That would be my number one game plan, because I really couldn't tell you. I have no idea anything about this Jaguars team other than Trevor Lawrence, Urban Meyer getting fined, and Laviska Shenault.
And plus, I believe Urban Meyer has signed his 1,366th coach. He's brought in a new quality control coaches. It is a joke around the league that Urban Meyer has the largest coaching staff in all of NFL, which is probably not a terrible thing if it's your first year in the league at all.
Well, and I think other sports have proven this, and I'm so happy that within 20 minutes I'm able to bring up the San Francisco Giants. But they have a staff. They have a staff of hitting and pitching coaches that almost is as much as their roster itself. And it is really proven, because it's all about the analytics and it's all about studying, pitch by pitch, bat, velocity coming from the bat, all this stuff. And they've got this massive crew, and I don't think it's necessarily a bad thing. It's going to be made fun of in the NFL, because the NFL, it takes 20 years to change. And of course, once it does, though, it explodes like we've seen. The other thing I want to say about Trevor Lawrence, John, and again, this is just a show for me, is just about reminding people about the narratives that we've established here on the show. And back in the day when we were doing AFR 12 years ago, whatever it was, 9 years ago, John Pelkey was on record over and over again saying Mike Trout is the next Joe Charbonnet.
Joe Charbonnet, yeah.
So to me, I'm on record right now as saying that Trevor Lawrence, it will be your Mike Trout for the NFL version.
Well, no, I see.
You said he was a bust from the get, John, from the get.
But as much like a scientist, for those of you who don't believe science, having a different opinion doesn't necessarily mean that you were lying in the beginning. It means that you now have gotten more information that will help you out. And I will have to say, I agree with Derek. I've been really impressed by what I've seen from Trevor Lawrence. This is going to be a tough year for him, because to Derek's point, the Jaguars need players. I mean, there's some young talent on that team, but they don't have a cohesive unit yet. It's going to take Urban Meyer a couple of years to get there, at least. And Trevor Lawrence is going to struggle. I mean, we have to remember, Troy Aikman won one game his first year. So wins and losses aren't the thing. But I'm kind of turning my opinion of Lawrence, because I did believe that when he was at Clemson, if you're the quarterback at Clemson, Alabama, Ohio State, there are probably 2 games a year when you're really challenged with what you do. the rest of the time, it's a little bit of pitch and catch going on. But what I've seen from him,
Clemson, and they can't score a touchdown. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah. I mean, and there are obviously some other stories there, but it's not a bad point. But yeah, I think if Urban figures it out, and I always do worry about guys coming from college because there's a lot of evidence that it takes them a long time or even their second job or whatever to figure it out. Urban's a smart guy. I don't think he's going to get him killed, which I think was everybody's concern coming into this. I think he's going to have success. I'm not ready to put him in the Hall of Fame right now, and I don't know if the Urban Meyer thing is going to work out.
You're coming off your bust predictions.
Yeah, I'm coming off my bust
certainty. You had a lot of certainty. It was very anti-scientific back in those days.
You were ready to die on that hill.
I really was. I thought I saw Dan McGuire. I swear to God, I saw Dan McGuire with him. That's it. But maybe I'm wrong. All right, so let's talk about some of these other guys. Let's talk about Zach Wilson for a bit, because he just seems to be the guy who engenders the most discussion about, there's a love-hate thing with Wilson. I listened to a couple of interviews with him, and he really came across as a guy with a really, really good head on his shoulders, which I think is really important if you're going to be a quarterback in New York. I think, the Eli Manning was the perfect guy there because he's just sort of, tepid water. He's a guy with a lot of talent, but also a lot of questions. And that's a team, Derek, that's probably not going to be particularly good. What have you seen from Wilson? What are your feelings about him? And should he be starting?
7-6.
Should he be starting?
Just with Wilson, I mean, I think it all comes down to the offensive coordinator that they have there with in New York. I mean, they're going to run a very, very, Kyle Shanahan-esque offense. So that's going to help. And then you can kind of unlock his abilities and let his athletic ability kind of take over from there. And that system is relatively safe. I mean, it's very quarterback friendly. It's going to get you easy throws, easy completions, doing those sorts of things. So I think that's going to be a big component of it. And then Robert Saleh putting together a pretty good defense to support him as well. He looked really good against Green Bay. Talk about Zach Wilson. Some of the throws that he makes, some of the out of structure stuff. I know Colin Cowherd said that he reminds him of what did he say, Mormon Johnny Manziel or something like that, which I don't necessarily see, but I can understand where he can kind of make that comparison. I mean, he is obviously not the same kind of attitude in the head that Manziel had, but I think you can kind of see some of the athletic stuff.
He's a great athlete. He's a much better athlete than I thought. I don't think BYU. He gets a lot of credit to BYU because of the schedule, and people just don't see them play a lot. So maybe the move to the Big 12 will help them if that indeed happens. But he athletically, he is a very, very gifted athlete. There's no doubt about it. And he can throw a ball through a wall too. And he's not a huge guy. He's not a real big guy. And I know that's some of the concern. When you have a smaller athletic quarterback, the concern is that he won't stand the punishment, frankly.
Yeah. And, that's obviously a concern. But I think, too, like I said, that scheme should protect them a little bit, too, until they start to get the pieces. I mean, I don't know what their schedule looks like, but, I think that he could be a guy that obviously ascends. I don't know that he's going to be, a top, 5 quarterback in the league ever, but he could hover around, the top 10 mark.
And we've seen if you have a quarterback, Mark, that's in the top half of quarterbacks in the league, and you put together you can win a lot of football games.
I mean, you can. When's the last time the Jets did have a top 10 quarterback on any level? Was it Chad? But I mean, they made the playoffs a few years when they had a decent quarterback, and that's potential. The division is not soft. It's not as soft as it used to be. We know that. And we just worry about, Darnold had a lot of the same love coming in, 3-4 years ago, whenever it was, a lot of the same love with his skills. And so we'll see. It's for me, that's a tough one. It looks good, but the preseason, I want to say this. I don't care about the preseason. I don't think the preseason matters. And I think so much of the preseason these days, the Niners played the Raiders the other day, and they didn't, they started Jock Peterson or whoever it was at quarterback. It was no one's playing any starters. There's only 3 games, and I don't think it matters. There's a lot of love for Zach Wilson, but to me, my bottom line is it's still the Jets.
Well, let me ask
Saleh, but it's
can I ask
take some time.
I want to ask Derek that question too, because it is a really good question. And I mean, I think obviously as I said earlier, the first game of the season is really the first time guys are, they're bullets in the gun. It's full speed. I don't care what anybody says. Yes, there are guys during preseason who are, fringe roster guys who are trying to make the team on special teams and everything. But for quarterbacks coming out of college, when that adage, which is people use it too much, but it's true. You throw guys open in the NFL. You don't have, unless it's Gronkowski down the middle of the field. Nice job there by the middle of the Cowboys defense. You generally don't have guys that are just wide open, and you're not used to seeing what you see in the NFL. How important is it to you, Derek, to see? Because I do think that the young quarterbacks gain something from that preseason play.
No, they definitely do. The game I always talk about with my guy, the game's got to slow down for you. So that first game, he talked about it's like the bullets are flying. Everything felt like it was happening in real time, in real speed, and probably a little bit faster. Just in your head, that internal clock goes a little bit faster than it does in practice when you're not hit. You're seeing a different defense than you had for 3 weeks in training camp. So it's obvious, or 4 years in college, wherever you were at. So there's definitely that component. Everybody out there is good. There isn't a guy that's going to be out there that's going to be, working at, FedEx Kinko's or something like that. But in a couple of years, your enterprise, you got D linemen that are running, 4.6, 4.7, 4.8. So, I mean, they're coming for you. Yeah. And they're all trying to get the money bag too. So, there's obviously an incentive there as well for those guys too. But I think the biggest thing is just for a guy to get the game to slow down for him. And then once you understand your own concepts and the own timing and rhythm of your own offense, as well as the defense that you're going against, because you're going to see different schemes that you didn't see in college. College can sometimes, and it's funny because it's a case-by-case basis. Sometimes you'll see some of the most exotic defenses you'll ever see that you'll never pop up in the NFL. Sometimes you see the most base-looking defenses and fronts that look elementary in high school. So, it's kind of a mixed bag in college. In the NFL, every defense is going to have a pretty good scheme. Now, you're going to be able to tell, I think, in some cases, maybe it's the camera angle that you can kind of tell. You can pick up on stuff a little bit easier at the NFL level, unless, you get teams that want to roll and disguise stuff a bunch. But just understanding that and try to get to that point of, okay, how is the defense trying to attack me? And then how does our concept relate to how they're attacking us?
Yeah, I always like Mark, and I'll let you educate, but I always come back to the thing where people go, he played against Alabama in college, and 8 of their starting defenders played in the NFL. Well, the defense that he's going to play against in the NFL, all 11 of those guys made it to the NFL. And oh, by the way, so did the guys who are backing them up. And so to that point, Mark, that's what I like to see, the young quarterbacks throwing against NFL defensive backs. Even guys who are fringe guys on the roster are better than 95% of the guys they ever saw in college.
No, really? I agree with that. There's no doubt about it. But they rarely see first team. Rarely.
Those games should not be televised. I do agree with that. There's no reason to watch preseason football.
Well, of course there is, because everyone watches it.
So do I.
I know you do.
That's why it shouldn't be televised, so it's not a choice.
All right. So we're going to get into some predictions if and when we have time. We should only have this. This should only be an hour show. Yeah. But this idea. Well, first of all, how much do you buy the idea, Derek, that Shanahan is going to do what he did against the Raiders, and it's going to be not 50-50, but 75-25, 70-30, back and forth, keeping the defense on its heels. Granted, they were second and third team defenders. That's what I keep coming back to. But is there something to that in your mind, or do you think it's going to be few and far between, maybe 5 to 7 snaps a game tops, just to kind of get him in there, get a feel? But really, it's Garoppolo's team, and that kind of offense is not sustainable. What do you think?
If you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none.
Right.
So I think I'm trying to think of like a real example. I mean, when has there been an example that has worked? It sounds great on paper, and it just kind of falls apart every time that a team does it. I mean, it's almost like communism. It sounds great on paper until it just falls apart.
What about red zone? What about just the red zone? Because
the red zone could work, yes. But but Kyle Shanahan already has enough great stuff in the red zone that, yes, it can add a layer into your offense and stuff. But is it worth pulling a guy? Say you go 90, say Garoppolo has a 95 or 90-yard drive. You get down to the three-yard line. You put Trey Lance in. I mean, if I'm Garoppolo, I'm like, what the hell? I just drove you guys down here the length of the field, and now you put the other guy in. Maybe it's a better relationship than people might think, and maybe that's how it works. I have no idea, but I've never been a fan of switching on and off two quarterbacks. I think quarterbacks are very rhythmic, and you got to get into a groove, and I think that kind of disrupts the groove of it. Now, when I watched the Oakland game, there was a ton of components from the Baltimore offense. That some of the run stuff, whether it's counter bash or power read or split zone read, like it's all the same plays that Baltimore runs, and Kyle Shanahan just basically copied and pasted it and just kind of put it into his own offense and remixed it a little bit with what they do. But it's a lot of the same scheme, so you're not going to see counter bash with Jimmy Garoppolo. But yeah, I've never been a fan of a 2 quarterback system. I think it just kind of hurts the rhythm and the flow of whoever the starter is. And plus, I think it adds a weird dynamic in the locker room as well, too, because especially if one guy's the captain and the other guy's scoring all the touchdowns, it's like, okay, well, why don't we just go with the guy that's scoring all the touchdowns?
Yeah, I think particularly it's going to be difficult for San Francisco to try to pull something off like that because they are a contender in thought. We always go back to the way, at least I do, Dan Reeves handled Michael Vick on that Atlanta team when he came there. And was it still Chris Chandler? I can't remember who the quarterback was at that time, but they had a few packages for Vick to go in and just, see the speed of the game, maybe use his feet a little bit, but there wasn't a, we're always going to put him in on short yardage. We're always going to do that. To Derek's point, where you're pulling out a quarterback who may be having success, it's just more of a case of we're going to get this guy in there from time to time. And I don't think they were a contending team at that time. You play to win the game, Herm. I completely agree with that. But Derek, as well as I do that there are NFL teams out there that realize going into the season, or at least a few games in, we're not going to be there at the end, and we need to start evaluating talent. And we drafted this guy in the first round. Yeah. Most teams can't be like the Green Bay Packers. We got to play him at some point.
They traded a lot to move up to go get him.
Yep.
And you're probably in the most competitive division in football. That is a arms race between the Rams, the Niners, the Seahawks, and the Cardinals. I mean, they're all racing to get talent all the time. I mean, their chips are always in. So do you really want to sit around and mess around with this when you have arguably one of the better defenses in football? You get George Kittle back. You have Deebo Samuel, Ayuk, like Raheem Mostert, and the guy who was the other one? Sermon, the running back.
Sermon, yeah.
So you have all this talent, pretty good offensive line. Do you want to sit around and mess with Jimmy Garoppolo, or do you want to just move forward? But it's a weird dynamic because you worry about, okay, well, we got to the Super Bowl with Garoppolo, but this other guy has all these intangibles and talents, and do we want to basically push all of our eggs in one basket and go with Trey Lance, who what if he's the one that now ends up holding the team back from contending, and then now you look like an idiot because now you can't go back to Garoppolo because now that's weird, and that's a weird dynamic.
Yeah, well, I think though that we've seen a lot of that we saw that with Tua last year and Fitz. Everyone thought you can't have Tua in there and then bring him out and put Fitz back in, and that's exactly what they did, and it worked. I think things can work. I think in the NFL we tend to really just look to the past as opposed to the future, and I think Trey Lance I don't think he looks quite ready to lead a team, but Garoppolo looks great, and I think is responding to the competition and all that good stuff. And I think the locker room's behind it. Again, I'm a 49er, Montana sat for a year and a half before he started.
Right.
And then his third year, he wins the Super Bowl. Rodgers sat for 3 years. Everyone doesn't have to be Peyton Manning or Trevor Lawrence or Zach Wilson. I think the teams that really are lucky and fortunate can develop their starter, and they don't, or their future starter, and they don't have to have him just carry a clipboard. He can actually get some game action. And I do want to mention 50 years ago, John, about this team. 50 years ago, the Dallas Cowboys went back and forth from Craig Morton to Roger Staubach all
Yep.
year, and they ended up winning the Super Bowl.
They finally decided, I think week 8 or 9 on Staubach for the rest. A couple of things with the Miami thing. I think Jimmy Garoppolo and Ryan Fitzpatrick are two different personalities. So I think Fitz is the kind of guy you could probably pull that sort of thing off with, because I'm not going to say he doesn't have an ego. He obviously went to Harvard and he's been in the NFL since the late 50s, and with his 37th team. But I think that's the difference. And I also think with Trey Lance, people need to remember that he played one game last season. They did North Dakota, South Dakota, East Dakota, the Dakotas, Wind Tunnel Dakota, whatever the hell it is.
It should be one state. Let's start there.
It should be Dakota.
One state.
It really
Why
should.
Are there 2 states? Because there's 18 people living in both, and they get 4 senators. Makes no sense.
It is odd, but I think Trey Lance, to your point, it may not be ready, but I do really think there's going to be a lot of pressure to play him, and hopefully for your sake, Mark, those will be in games where you're up a couple of touchdowns. And the other rookie quarterback in Chicago with the Bears, whose name completely just went out of my head when I tried to make a joke.
Justin Fields.
Absolutely. I saw a little bit of him. I actually think Justin Fields, the ceiling for Justin Fields may be as good as Trevor Lawrence, frankly, in the end. But what are we 100% sure it's going to be Andy Dalton, right, to start the season for them?
Yeah,
I believe so. What are your thoughts about Fields? I'm a little surprised the Bears didn't pull the trigger on that.
Yeah, me too. I mean, I'm not really sure what they're waiting for, just because, I mean, if they must have gotten a green light from the front office or from ownership that says, your job is not going to be in trouble right now if you go with Andy Dalton and you lose early. That this is a team that went to the playoffs, and people forget about this. They went to the playoffs like the last 2 out of 3 years with Mitch Trubisky. So they obviously have a good roster. And if their defense can get back to playing how it was the beginning of last year, I think they could be they could be a problem for some people. Now, I mean, I think everybody knows what the ceiling is with Andy Dalton, but everybody knows watching in the preseason that Justin Fields is it for sure. When that time will come, I have no idea. I mean, maybe I'd give it till week 3. If they, are out the gate and they start 1-2 or 0 or something like that, I can obviously see him pop in. He showed a lot of athletic ability in those games of being able to get out of the pocket, make throws on the run, use his legs to extend plays, whether he was throwing the ball or running it. He still obviously had some few rookie mistakes. I mean, he missed, a slide protection where a guy came free off the edge and he got absolutely drilled. Hey, those are some of the things of playing quarterback in the NFL. You're going to have to be able to see a nickel blitz and get your protection right to get over there. You're going to pay the consequence.
I like Justin Fields a lot. I really, really do. I think he's going to be pretty great, and it's going to be very interesting because historically, the Bears do not have great quarterbacks. They don't. They haven't had one in a long, long time. What about Mac Jones? Are you as impressed as everyone else seems to be?
He is a system operator. That's basically what he was in the preseason. I don't know what his ceiling is. I don't know that his ceiling is too high, but his floor is pretty high as well too. So, I mean, he just basically does what they ask him to do. High percentage throws, be accurate, go to the right people, get the right checks, identify the right fronts and blitzes. I mean, he just does the things that you would want the quarterback to do in that system.
And by all accounts, the team, the veterans, also really liked him, and he's got great command in the huddle and everything. I think Mac Jones sometimes gets a little bit of because he went to Alabama, and what I talked about before, where you're probably challenged a couple of games a season if you're the quarterback at Alabama. He obviously, that comes into play when people are evaluating him, but they always talk about systems, and of all of those guys that we mentioned, I think he's the one who ended up in the best system for his skill set. I can't think of any place that would be better for him. I was as surprised as anyone that they named him the starter, but don't be surprised if they're back in the playoffs with him.
You could see why everybody was linking Mac Jones to San Francisco, though. of that system operator, ball distributor, basically being the point guard and getting the ball to where the offensive coordinator, the quarterback coach is telling you where to throw. So there's a lot of that. But yeah, I mean, there was even a quote today from Cam Newton after he got released saying that, this was the first system that he had to really identify the mic, identify fronts, identify all that stuff. And I'm like, isn't that every system? I mean, we do that. Like, you got to be able to know, like, hey, like, Mike 4-3 or Mike, 52 or whatever. Okay, we got to slide the protection to the field, back into the boundary. Okay, do I want the back to get out? Do I want the back to stay in? Okay, well, if I want him to stay in, it's this protection. If I want him to leave, it's this protection. Now I got to tell him where to go. Okay, where's the safety? Safety's over there. Like,
right.
There's a lot that goes into it. And now there's some offenses that if you have an intelligent enough center might just do all of it for you. But the center can't see a corner blitz. He can't see a nickel blitz. So there's times where the quarterback's got to be like, hey, like, kill. We got to go. We got to slide there.
Right. And it's going to be a little bit more difficult this year, too. I just somehow this slipped by me because they changed the numbering system in the NFL and they're allowing like linebackers now to wear numbers between 1 and 59 or 60. I don't know where. And then back up in the 90s. Anyway, Tom Brady making the point that when now it's tougher to identify because he used to know, well, guys wearing number 11 on defense, he probably shouldn't be there. But now he could be wearing number 11 and he could be a strong safety. He can be a linebacker. He could be a free safety. And Brady's like, it's a stupid rule. I hate it because that identifying of your Mike linebacker and where your pressure's coming from, it's a hell of a lot different if you're checking down and the guy who's going to put pressure as a middle linebacker or he's a free safety. I mean, it changes everything and it's going to be harder. So poor Cam. Good Lord. I'm glad he got the 1 year in the system. Hopefully he can parlay that.
Poor quarterbacks, poor quality control guys. I got to sort out what package defenses are in when the nickel is wearing number 13. I don't know if he's a linebacker or not. I mean, if Cam Chancellor was out there wearing number 5, I honestly wouldn't know if he's a linebacker or a strong safety.
Right.
I mean, look at him. Like, how would you even identify that? Like, so it's like that in college. I mean, we get guys like there's like a whole secondary, the nickel's wearing number 1. So then I got to look up on the roster. Okay, what is he listed as? All right, well, he's listed as a linebacker, but he's not playing linebacker. He's a safety. Okay, so their SID guy obviously is messing with people. So now I got to go back and redo it. And it's a pain in the ass. I'm telling you.
No,
I'm with Brady on that. It's like, dude, just wear the numbers that are given. Like, this has been like, just do this. Like, you don't need to wear your college number, I promise, so you can put it on a gold chain.
Right. Well, Mark, it's something you never thought about, but it is going to be interesting to see if those quarterbacks that are like the Bradys of the world are the guys who they say will beat you before the snap. Is it going to be more difficult to beat you before the snap now because it's more difficult to recognize pressure? Brady seemed to figure it out last night, but boy, I tell you what, if I'm a defensive coordinator, I renumber everybody on my team and just make it as confusing as I possibly can.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. It's obvious that if a Tom Brady and a Derek Abbott agree on anything, then obviously something that's gonna work for the opposition. If that can confuse and at the very least cause more of a pain in the ass, so that there's a percentage of your workday, Derek, that you have to spend figuring that out as opposed to getting it that maybe they can get an advantage from that. All right. So Cam Newton, we've established. Cam Jones.
That's the hybrid between Mac Jones if he were 6'6". And yeah, exactly.
They want Trey Garoppolo as well in San Francisco.
Right.
But Mac Jones if he worked out.
Cam
and he would have to grow a little bit.
We've established is not a system operator. Is not an operator on any level. He is a creator and not an operator. So every year there's 4 to 5 teams, usually in both conferences, that don't make the playoffs that made the playoffs last year. But let's say there's 6 teams overall. Let's pick the number 6 overall in both conferences. One can have 4, one can have 2, whatever the breakdown is. In the AFC, you had Buffalo, Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Baltimore, Tennessee, Kansas City, and Indianapolis last year. So out of those 7, are there any that don't make it this year? are either Indy or Tennessee on a bubble? Is Cleveland on a bubble? A lot of love going Cleveland's way these days.
Yeah.
Is Baltimore on a bubble because of all the injuries?
Well, yeah, they won't have anybody left.
What do we think about the AFC, or does it remain intact? And I'll tell you, Miami, that's the biggest, to me, the biggest interesting thing of the preseason was some of these polls that general managers took in terms of ranking each team in each conference. And in the AFC alone, Miami, and these are general managers that, ostensibly know what they're doing personnel-wise, roster-wise, and are able to identify strengths and weaknesses on each roster. They have Miami 11th. So coming into this year, I'd say Miami was a likely team to step up and kick someone else out, but I'm not sure now. Derek, what are your feelings about the AFC and who stays and who goes?
Well, man, I think it's tough. I mean, I think the two bubble teams are Tennessee and Indianapolis. I think one of those two go. The other, well, obviously one of them, because it's not going to be Jacksonville and it's not going to be Houston if they still have a team. It's neither going to be one of those. So one of those teams are going to be bouncing. I think that's where you could see like a Miami slide into that slot. Truthfully, it all rides on Carson Wentz. What Carson Wentz looks like, how his foot is, and if Indy, in the same way that Baltimore, have anybody left at the end of the year with all of their injuries and COVID issues and everything else. So I'd probably say Indy is the odd team out right now, and Tennessee would probably stay. But it's so hard to sustain the success that Tennessee's had, and it almost feels like that their window is on. They're exiting that window for a championship run just because they still have some of the same defensive issues. They did load up. They paid premium dollar for a good pass rusher, but Dupree. So did that overall help? I mean, that's the P to be determined. Bud Dupree is also coming off of a late season or mid-season ACL injury, so you have no idea how he's going to look either. But it's hard to sustain that kind of success, especially offensively when you're. I mean, I get that it's Derrick Henry and he could be the exception, but to have that kind of a season 3 years in a row, it's hard to sustain.
Yeah, I mean, Mark, I completely agree with Derek. Those are the two teams. I mean, I think if Carson Wentz had been healthy and gone through all of, I feel better about them because defensively, people forget that how good they were defensively last year at times. And they gave Buffalo everything they could handle in that playoff game with, and Phillip Rivers is a good quarterback. Wentz at his best, I think, in his age would be a slight upgrade. But I also, you mentioned the Browns, Mark, and I worry about them because of the expectations. And it's that, is Tennessee going to be that team that we keep writing them off every year? And every year it's like, oh, that was a 1. Well, that was a 2 year. That was a 3 year. Maybe they're that team. And I just worry about Cleveland that, as you know, Mark, manage expectations.
No, I know. And they start believing their own press. And
Cleveland's not doing that right now, and that worries me. They do have a lot of talent, though.
They do well when no one thinks they're going to do well,
right.
And they don't do well when everyone does.
Right.
Johnny, in the North, you're in the North. We're talking about Baltimore, but Lenny brings up the point about Pittsburgh, and Joe Connolly is also watching. Our two stalwarts. Says maybe Harris makes the difference because Harris, a good running game can change the dynamic of an offensive line, and that offensive line can start having some confidence because they're blocking, and they might be rejuvenated in a way. And we've seen that happen where just a good running back can change the entire offensive dynamic and give another year or two of real life to Ben. I don't know if that's the case. I know, Derek, you didn't believe that was the case. Draft day, you thought that, this is how you change the dynamic of an offensive line. You draft better offensive linemen. You don't get a running back, was your point. Your dad disagreed. Where do you land right now going into Pittsburgh, and how much they have left in the tank with Ben?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously their receiving core is one of the better ones in the league, I think, with Claypool, Johnson. Let's see how Freiermuth pans out as well, too. I mean, there's been a lot of buzz around him at the tight end for Penn State that they drafted in the second round. There's been a lot of buzz about him. Ben looked pretty good in the preseason. He looks slimmer. He's on the TB12 diet now, I guess. but like Zach Banner went to he's on injured reserve already to start the year. So obviously, and then David DeCastro retired. So you're already losing offensive linemen, and we're not even in week 1 yet. So the offensive line is still a major concern. You got to be able to protect and be able to run block, and you can't do either of those. You might as well just pack it in. So that's obviously a big component. Now, what I did like is some of the different stuff that they did offensively with Matt Canada, who is we've talked about him on the show a couple times, that he's the one that does all the crazy jet motion and shift stuff, and he did it at Pitt, USC, and a couple other stops as well too. So he's kind of where the Shanahans and McVay's got all of that crazy motion and shift stuff. So you're going to see a little bit more of that, a little bit more play action. I don't know how much boot you're going to see from Ben Roethlisberger. It's been a while since he's done any of that, but you can still kind of see Ben's fingerprints on this offense too. Of hey, let's just be in a static formation and let's just go throw the ball.
Yeah, I think you probably see a combination of both, but I agree. And the one thing that this is striking me is there are a lot of good teams in the AFC, and there are some good teams that aren't going to make the playoffs. I mean, honestly, because you start throwing in. I mean, I know there's a coaching change in with the Chargers. I almost said
Right.
San Diego,
Right.
but that's a team that if we're talking about the teams that fall out, Miami could be a team that steps up and gets the Chargers, though that is such a difficult division as well. I think I like Pittsburgh more than I thought I would coming into this season, particularly with the injuries in Baltimore. Though with Joe Burrow, is Cincinnati going to be better? The AFC is there are good football teams that are not going to make the playoffs.
And John, there's the argument that it's a better conference, at least on the top, than the NFC because of the young quarterback play. Because you've got Mahomes, you've got Lamar, and you've got Josh Allen. So there's that argument. I don't know if I buy it. I think the NFC is very strong as well. So maybe we agree that one team out of the South and one team out of the North fall out, possibly, and maybe maybe a Chargers, maybe a Dolphins. But that's not.
I'm very high on the Chargers.
Yeah, you like their head coach?
Love their head coach. He's everybody's kind of dubbed him the defensive version of McVay, and they were together on the same staff last year.
They were.
And some of the stuff they do defensively is really creative, and there was actually an article by The Athletic that came out about how competitive practice got between the two between McVay and Brandon Staley.
Sure.
But even when you watch, and that's how it should be. I mean, that's how practices should be. You want to get the best out of each other and compete on a daily basis and really push the limits of your offense and your scheme, and they do that every day with each other.
I was worried about how much love he was getting. It's Brandon Staley, is that his name?
Yeah.
And he had Aaron Donald. He had one of the best defensive linemen. So that level of defense, and his back end, he had the kid from Jacksonville that they got. What was his name?
Jalen Ramsey.
Jalen Ramsey. So they have Jalen Ramsey, one of the best, best DBs, one of the best defensive edge rushers, or linemen, I should say. And you're going to have a good defense if you have those players. You know what I mean?
True. It's true, but he took over for Wade Phillips and elevated the defense. And Wade Phillips is a legendary coach. So when you think about, okay, I have all these great pieces, okay, but the key to being the great coach is, one, being able to coach those great players and get them to execute what their assignment is, two, and then schemes in ways to unlock their talents. So whether you're using different formation or front sets or combination coverages or whatever it might be, how can we unlock these two players to make them the best and get the best play from them? I think that's what Brandon Staley does a good job. And if you listen to his sound bites, he's upbeat, he's energetic, he gets people going, he's a teacher. All of those things that you want in a head coach. And then plus, you're going to have, a guy that's going to be working with Justin Herbert that is on the front end of all the defensive changes in the league. So Justin Herbert's going to get all the inside information basically on how to attack these things and what trends are coming as well too. And they have, I think his name is Joe Lombardi, who is their offensive coordinator as well, who comes over from the Saints,
Mhm.
He was the offensive coordinator for Detroit very briefly, but he was with Sean Payton and Drew Brees for the better half of a decade. So you're going to see, I think, some components of the McVay offense and some components of the Sean Payton, maybe mid 2000 or late 2010s, or mid 2010s Saints type offense of attacking downfield crossers, stuff like that.
Yeah, they're really interesting to me because Justin Herbert. I mean, I'm calling him the Dan Marino for another generation because he's another guy who went back to college for a year and seemed like his stock dropped a little when he went back for his final year at Oregon. Until you look at the fact how much talent they lost and what a different team he was quarterbacking than his junior year or his sophomore year. I don't know if he came out of sophomore, junior, or senior. But yeah, they're interesting. All right, well, let's jump over to the senior circuit because we brought it up, the NFC. Which will still always be referred to as a senior. By the way, Joe Lombardi, grandson of Vince Lombardi, as well. So speaking of legendary coaches, and legendary, I love that Derek says that. Well, that means is Wade Phillips is really old. That is why he's a legendary coach. He's very
a legendary coordinator, I think, more than a coach.
Right. Yeah. He's kind of the dictionary definition of a guy who was better as a coordinator than he was a head coach. All right, in the NFC, Mark, who are your playoff teams in the NFC? Mark, go through the playoff teams in the NFC because I didn't do that actually.
Okay, well, Washington, out of the East last year was Washington. Out of the West was Los Angeles and Seattle. You had Green Bay and you had Chicago. To Derek's point, two out of 3 years.
Yep.
And you had the Saints. So am I leaving one out? You had obviously the Bucks as well. So
yeah.
The Saints and Bucks, the football team, which I think they should just keep that, by the way. Washington football team. I think
like it.
Just sounds so cool.
Yeah, looks, and I love numbers on helmets.
And I hate the Guardians, by the way. The Cleveland Guardians. That's the new team in Cleveland, the new baseball team name in Cleveland, which is like
they should have been the Cleveland Rocks.
Tom Hanks did a video saying, "What?
What does Tom Hanks have to do with Cleveland? How did that happen?
Who knows?
Good Lord, he'll do anything for a paycheck. Hanks,
I don't think he needs it.
He was available, fit within budget. Well, listen. All right. Well, let's jump the NFC because we're as always we're running a little bit late.
All right. So we've got the Rams and the Seahawks. I think both people think they're going to make it. We've got the Saints might be a team that fall off the board. Possibly the Washington football team, although I think they're better than they were, but it may need more than 8-8 or 7-9 to win that division.
Certainly a good defensive team.
And I think the Bucks go back. I think the Packers go back. Those are 4. And the Bears, the football team, and the Saints are the ones that might be up for grabs this year. That's my opinion. What do you think, Derek?
So I don't know that Chicago makes the playoffs. I don't think that they make the postseason this year. And the Saints are kind of the bubble team for me as well, too. I have no idea what to expect from Jameis Winston. They don't have Michael Thomas for 6 weeks as he's on the PUP list. No idea about their secondary or their defense at all, and what's going to happen with that, and especially in that division as well, too.
It's tough.
It is tough. So, I really like the Rams. I really like Seattle. Obviously, the Bucks are going to be there. I think Green Bay is going to be there as well too. A team that could kind of maybe make some headway is Arizona. I think that they're going to have a good offense. I mean, if they start to kind of figure out their intermediate pass game a little bit, and they play good defense, I think that they could be a team that causes some issues as well too. Maybe a little bit of regression with Green Bay. I mean, it's kind of hard to sustain that kind of year that Aaron Rodgers had last year, but I still think with that division they'll still be there at the top. It's going to be definitely, the West is probably the most interesting division and the most fun division to watch.
But you bring up the South as well. I think you're going to have a better Carolina team down there. I think Sam Darnold needed the change. I don't know what he's going to turn into as a quarterback, but I think they're going to be better. I think Atlanta is going to be. I think there's going to be a little bit of a bounce back there. So to your point, the Saints. They may play as well as they did last year with Jameis Winston and struggle more in that division. I just think it's a better division this year. So that's a little bit of a tougher ask for them. I agree with the Chicago thing. It's why I again, a little surprised that Fields didn't get the starting nod. Again, I'm glad Derek brought it up. People forget that with Mitch Trubisky, who is literally as hated as a St. Louis Cardinal baseball player in Chicago by many, many people, They got to the playoffs two out of 3 years. So, and I do agree with Washington because defensively, they're very, very good. They're going to give people a lot of problems. I mean, they gave the Buccaneers with Taylor Heineke as their quarterback, who I believe is now working at Walmart. Actually, I think he did make the team, but gave them trouble. But from what I saw
has
from
Ryan Fitzpatrick ever led a team to the playoffs ever?
No.
So
but how
I think their problem is what their problem was last year. It's the quarterback.
he is a transfer, but I don't think he's ever. I don't know if he's ever played on a team that has this good of a defense either. I mean, you see Fitzpatrick, and what he's really known for is throwing a ball. He's like the Jeff Blake for a different generation. So I don't think he's going to be asked to do too much, though he has a tendency to be a little bit of a gunslinger. But I just think with Dallas, if they stay healthy, I just think they're more talented. Who knows what Philadelphia is? There a bigger question mark than Philadelphia coming into this season? I mean, it'd be hard. Maybe Houston, to Derek's point, which may not have a football team due to litigation at some point. But I think the Giants will be improved as well. So I'm going to agree with those are the teams that are the most likely to fall out. I will say this though, I do agree. I mean, I like the Rams and I like the Seattle and everything, but that is a tough division, and somebody could drop a couple of games in that division and end up, a team that we think is an 11-win team could end up being a 9-win team and not make the playoffs.
They're going to beat each other up. We know this. Everyone's going to finish, 3-3, 4-2 against the other 3 teams, roughly.
Right.
The Niners, I think, could be an 11-win team. I do. I think Arizona could be a 10-win team.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the improvement of the Falcons and the Panthers as well. That South, again, John, you were ahead of your time. You were ahead of your time. It's the most interesting division in football.
It's very interesting. It's really interesting. Matt Ryan doesn't
make a big difference with that offense.
What's that,
Derek?
Say it again.
Kyle Pitts.
Oh yeah.
Does he reinvigorate that offense and just make
he's
it
not
explode?
going to have the same. He's not going to be what prime Julio was. Losing Julio obviously didn't help, but you can kind of unlock a lot of different things, and you can kind of move the needle with a tight end that does some of these things, whether it's formationally or just from a personnel standpoint and a matchup standpoint. That you're going to be able to get Kyle Pitts on maybe a linebacker or a safety or box safety that maybe isn't as good in the pass game, and then obviously about in the run game as well too. I think he's just so freaking dynamic. I think that he's going to be a really special player. I think guys that are hybrids that can play at a high level on both ends are the most dangerous players in football.
Yeah, he's going to be a difference maker if he stays healthy, which he seems to. So, yeah, the South caught up with me. It's finally interesting, but so is the West. To your point, there are going to be good football teams in the NFC that don't make the playoffs as well, I think.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of, it's funny because there's a lot of good football teams this year. You can look and be like, okay, there's probably about 7 or 8 that are just playing just to collect revenue for the year. Man, there's even the Giants, I think they're gonna have a really good defense this year. Yeah. They're gonna be competitive. I doubt you just from last night, Dallas. If they can get a couple stops here and there and they don't shoot themselves in the foot right before the half like they did last night, and they almost did at the end of the game. They're another team that could be really dangerous. So it's going to be a lot of fun this year.
All right. You know what that leaves us with as we just approach the hour mark is locks and shocks. Now, Derek, as an offensive coordinator, as a position coach, you would have been required to do this. As an offensive coordinator, you can take the fifth on this if you like. But Mark and I have to do it. The locks and shocks. Mark, let's start with our locks for this weekend. What is your lock this weekend?
I have a few locks.
Pick one.
I understand. There's a few out there. Week one, there's caveats everywhere.
Well, yeah. Honestly, just throw darts at a board at this point.
But my lock is the. I think the Rams win that game. Now it's interesting because that's the Sunday night game, and when the Rams were really good in 2018, The one
They have the
time they
Bears,
got
for anybody
tripped up
listening who doesn't know.
was with the Bears. I think they lost that game 10-6.
Yeah.
And this is when they won 13 games. But I'm going to go with them beating the Bears. Matthew Stafford comes out slinging. Andy Dalton can't keep up. I think we're going to see a lot of what we saw last night early on. A lot of offense, a lot of yards through the air, and that's going to happen Sunday night. And Andy Dalton's just not equipped for a shootout. That's why it's a lock.
All right. My lock's going to be, I mentioned the Falcons and the Eagles. I think the Eagles are a mess. I don't dislike Jalen Hurts, though I wouldn't be surprised if Gardner Minshew ends up starting at some point for them or someone else. I just think that's a mess there. And like I said, I think the Falcons are going to be an improved team and at home, 3.5. I think they'll cover and they'll win that game pretty easy, handily, frankly. Derek, you got one?
For a lock, I'm going to say actually the 49ers over the Lions.
Ooh.
That's gonna be my lock.
All right.
All right, fair enough.
I almost picked that as a shock, to be quite
I may still pick that as a shock.
All right, Mark, your shock.
Well, I was going with the Niners and the Lions. Week 1, you never know. And boy, there couldn't be more expectations for an easy W from the world right now. And that always concerns me, obviously.
Right.
It seems like the Browns always give the Chiefs a little bit of a hard time, but that's at Arrowhead. I don't see that turning around. I think the Dolphins, with all the speculation out there, I think the Dolphins have a shot to upend the Patriots week 1. So that's what I'll go with.
I don't think that's bad at all. Derek?
No.
I'm gonna go with Arizona over Tennessee. I know that's a little bit of a shocker, but I think maybe Arizona put some points on the board, and stop. If they can slow down Derrick Henry, they got a shot, which is a tall order to ask.
Yes.
Yeah.
if they can hold him under his average of 160 yards a game. I mean, has he gotten over 2,000 now 2 years in his career, or is it just the one? I think it's just the one.
Twice. No, I think it's twice.
That's just amazing. That's an amazing statistic.
I like that pick. Mine, I'm just going to way out on a limb. I think the Steelers upset the Bills.
Whoa.
Yeah, I think the Bills are going to be very, very good. But I go back to Bills and Patriots, the year that Lawyer Malloy was traded to the Bills, and the Bills beat the Patriots, and everybody was writing off as we always did when the Patriots would lose one game in a row. We'd start up. Yep, it's over with. I think Pittsburgh's going to go in. I think they're better than they were last year, and I think they're going to go in and give Buffalo a hard time. And I think they're going to win the football game. I think Buffalo's going to bounce back and win the division. But that's my week 1. Well, there's always a week 1 when that doesn't make sense and causes us to overreact about all teams involved.
Well, to me, that's why Monday night's going to be so much fun when we do the show again on Monday at 7:00 Eastern time, and Derek will join us at 7:30. Is that we'll have a whole day of absorbing all of the overreaction, and we can react to the overreaction, which is going to be a lot of fun. Normally, John Pelkey is a road dog kind of guy. Always, road favorite. The road favorite.
Questionable road favorites. Yep. And there are several of them, but again, it's week 1. That comes into play after week 1. By the way, they did a poll, and if Trevor Lawrence weren't starting for the Jaguars Texans game would have been replaced by a rerun of McMillan and Wife that was going to show for that, because that's interest in the
50-year-old reference that
has a team. I know,
and I love it.
Can we just close about the Texans? It's like for years they were that team that it was like, this is going to be the year, and they just hung around. And now, I mean, talk about a franchise that's seemingly cursed. I mean, they could have traded Deshaun Watson to anyone a year ago, and people would have, given them millions of dollars and millions of players, and now they're just, I'm sorry, we're writing them off, which you know what that means. They're going to win the division because we're writing them off.
All right, Derek, before we let you go, talk about the next opponent coming up for the Coast Guard.
Yeah, so tomorrow we go up to Curry College. They're a team that lost last week to MIT. Really good. They're a good football team. We feel pretty confident in play. We had a really good week of practice. We played Curry in 2019, and they came to us, and we won 17-7. So it was a really good matchup. It's going to be a physical fight. They're a physical football team. That we have to match that intensity. But we've been saying all week that we're gonna initiate the intensity and the physicality from the beginning, kind of set the standard from the jump. So, I'm really looking forward to being on the sideline again. And as the week went by fast, I will say that. So that first week leading up to the game felt like it was about a month.
Yeah, I bet.
But plus you're looking at the same tape of a team that played 2 years ago. So I'm like, oh my gosh, like what are we doing? Like I'm preparing for all this stuff, and it might not even happen because I don't even, I know the guys on the roster, half of them aren't even there.
Right.
At least now you got a week of film on a team. You can kind of see something that's new and fresh, and you can be like, okay, now we can do it. You start to figure out yourself too. So we've pretty good guys. Had great we could practice. They really attack this week with a great mindset and attitude too.
I'm sorry, I missed all of that while I was picturing what MIT's playbook looks like. I assume it's like an algebra book, and it's just it's just X, Y, Z to the coefficient 3 over, and just they have to beat you at the snap because they average height and weight of a player on the MIT team, Mark, 5'2", 104. So they have leverage.
They're trying to beat you at physics, not football.
I will say this is that MIT's got some freaking guys. Like, just watch them on tape. They got some really big football players. I'm like, holy crap, where are they getting these guys?
Hey, let me tell you something. If you want to go, and I know I don't think they have athletic scholarships, but they give grant and aids to guys. If you have an engineering bent and MIT comes calling,
yeah,
you can do worse.
They get a lot of the guys that either choose MIT over with the Ivy League schools, or still want to play football and still want to go to a high end school academically. So, and obviously don't want to serve, or else they'd be here.
Yeah, Service Academy. I've always said watched a lot of Service Academy football. Those are a different breed of cat. Those guys. I mean, they're as intense and smart and dedicated as anybody. Which is why the Army Navy game is the one college football game that I if I'm working, I have to record it. You just have to. It's part of America. You're a bad American if you don't watch it. Mark, you've never seen that. You've never once seen the game.
I Googled it. I Googled it. John Urschel, a guard for the Ravens, MIT alum.
He's a mathematician. He's like this brilliant. John Urschel is the guy they bring on when he's the face of the NFL. When they go, wait, we got smart guys. What's Urschel doing? Yeah. Do we have Urschel? And they bring him out there because he's just this ridiculous. He's like a chess master and a mechanical engineer, and that only touches the surface. He's just offensive linemen never get enough credit. Those are the guys. Those are the smartest guys on your football team generally.
I agree.
All right, Mark, wrap this thing up.
All right, that's it, Derek. We look forward to seeing you on Monday night about 7:30. We're gonna comment on all the obvious overreactions going to happen in Week 1. We've given you our basic idea of who stays, who goes in the NFL, and locks and shocks. For John Pelkey, for Jeff Taylor, for Derek Abbott, offensive coordinator Derek Abbott. I'm Mark Furry. You've been watching and listening to After Further Review. Talk to you soon.
Congratulations, Derek, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, man. Call and plays. Come on. I remember Terry